Welcome back to the Eduverse Enigma Podcast. This week, we're chatting with special guest Michael Carter, professor and program coordinator at St. Lawrence College. This episode, we'll be diving into mixed reality and the MetaQuest 3, interdepartmental and institutional collaboration, and the evolution of the Making the Metaverse podcast and on the blockchain.ca. You won't want to miss it.
Michael, thank you for coming on the bus for the Eduverse Enigma, being the first guest on the bus.
Man, I'm honored. I didn't realize I was going to be the first one to do this. This is really fantastic. I have a lot of feelings. I feel adventure, and I feel also like home and cozy. And I love the Star Wars in the epoxy table that I guess you can't see, but I'm sure
you can see a little bit. But we'll share.
It's so great. There's such a good vibe here, and it's the first time that we've met in person. It's been a great day. You know, I never get to do this. Right. I never get to hang out with people before I do a show, and it's good. I like it.
Yeah, I think it gets ideas percolating, and it just gets everything going.
Yeah. One of the things that is in the back of my mind also is don't steal. I had this fear of we're gonna be talked out and spend all of our ideas and then have nothing to talk about on the show. But I don't think that's the case.
I think
it's great warm up
for sure. And I think I wrote down a couple of the points we were talking about, and we'll remember others and something that we can go back to.
Yeah.
As well, so,
yeah. And you just rolled in from Ottawa this morning.
Last night I came in.
Last night. Okay.
Yeah. So slept in the Walmart parking lot with another bus last night, and now I'm here.
Did you meet the other bus person?
Unfortunately not. They pulled in later, and then they were leaving in the morning, so I didn't get to meet them. But
they're another van life person.
Yeah. They had trees on the side of their bus and everything, so they must be traveling around.
And have you met any other van life people yet? Do you think that's a thing?
It's definitely a thing.
Yeah.
I've met a couple people, but I'm part of a few Facebook groups, so
okay.
When I this 2 weeks has been a little hectic getting on the road, but once we're fully on the road, then I'm sure I'll be messaging people and doing some meetups and everything. Yeah.
And you are on your own now. You had a group from Conestoga with you up until yesterday?
Up until Friday.
Friday. Oh, okay.
So yeah, it was the 1 week with Conestoga. We went to Sudbury, Timmins, North Bay, and then I headed to Ottawa, and they headed back to Kitchener. So
it's warmer down here.
Yes, yeah. It's actually, I was saying to you, last night I was fine to sleep without my heater on.
Yeah.
In Ottawa, that was not the case.
Yeah. Oh, this is great. I'm just so happy and pleased, and just I feel like a cool kid today. So thanks.
Oh, thanks. And I'm
not something I felt growing up, so it's nice. It's nice to have
in the back of the bus. It's cool. Yeah. I'm glad that you feel comfortable. And, it's cool having the first person in the bus.
Oh, it's great, man. It's great.
But I guess to start off for the audience, can you give a little bit of background from looking at your LinkedIn? Back in the day, you worked at GNC. And now you're a professor here at St. Lawrence. So
it's a long story. I'll try and keep it short. How did I get here? I guess I didn't get an education after high school. That wasn't really part of my family life, and so I just kind of worked for a couple of years. I worked at GNC. And then I lived in a yoga center for a couple of years in Western Massachusetts. And that was wild. That's a whole other podcast series, I think.
Were you a yoga instructor at the same time?
So I learned how to teach there.
Okay.
Yep. Let's see, I came back to Canada. I had no idea what to do with my life. I was just completely lost. And I thought about maybe getting some education. I took a single course at Ryerson.
Okay.
Go Rye High in 2003 something, in business. I had no idea what I was doing with my life. At the same time, I was working for the YMCA and getting some professional kind of training and development.
Right.
And that first course in Ryerson ended with it proceeded to me doing full-time studies at Queen's, just down the street from St. Lawrence College here.
Yeah.
Then doing some studies at the University of Toronto, and then back to Queen's for more studies. And then I left my PhD program after 6 or 7 years during the pandemic. I had been borrowing for too long. I was way overextended.
Right.
And so I found myself doing roofing work.
Oh, interesting.
Actually.
Okay.
So it was kind of like a weird moment for me where, I kind of had this like, doing nothing with my life, and then like tried to do something with my life. And then, not that roofing is nothing, but like, I was doing just labor, basically carrying shingles. Right. And it's hard work.
Oh, yes.
But it's work I could have done before I got an education. So it was kind of like, wow, like what was that all about? So I did that for about a year. And then I started working at the Smith School of Business. Did that for a year, and then got hired as faculty at the college. So back on the like, wow, like, okay, like, that thing that I did in the middle, like it's taken me somewhere now.
Right.
The work that the program that I'm in is in applied science and computing. That's tied to, I guess, my work as a surveillance scholar, primarily, looking at the collection, the sharing and analysis of personal data.
Okay.
So that's me trying to keep things really short.
Okay. No, very interesting to hear the background, and I didn't know about the roofing in there.
Yeah.
It's all the transitions.
Wild, man.
It's
been wild. Yeah.
And so you brought up YMCA, and obviously we talked about that a little bit earlier. Like you were saying, we're hanging out before this. I'm curious, what got you interested in virtual reality? And because when we were talking earlier, you mentioned at the YMCA, you did some of that more hands-on training. Like, did that like spark part of the idea about virtual reality, or?
No, not at all. Although I think about it often, and as we were talking about earlier, certainly like high application for sure.
Yes.
So the chain of events is I was doing in my PhD work, I was looking at financial and mobility systems, particularly in the context of public transit. So I was looking at the different sort of networks, like let's say like public transit, and then like commuter trains, and like bike shares, and parking lots, and tolls, and like how we have all of these sort of mobility networks with different payment systems attached to them, and sort of thinking through how they could be integrated or why they aren't integrated. Because I'm not an engineer. I'm what I call a socio-technical researcher. So I look at the intersection of technology with economics and politics and culture, I guess. So at some point, I started thinking about how cryptocurrency could enter the chat and be a part of that. Could it serve a purpose in that respect? Thinking through creating this sort of integrated, unified system where you could just have, let's say one account that would allow you to then pay through all of the different systems. Of course, now we have, with not a surprise that, MasterCard, Visa, Amex have solved that problem. Right now, it's just tap and pay anywhere you go. And so, like for example, in New York City, when I visit there, I just tap on the line, and they figure it out. Right. Okay, once you hit a max in a week, we won't charge you anymore. It's all taken care of, right? And there were some constraints also with like cost and time of transaction, which Visa, MasterCard are experts. That's what they do.
Yeah. Right.
Instant payments, low cost. Right. So anyhow, but that was a while ago. And so when I found myself exiting the doctoral program, thinking like, what do I do with my life now? Where do I go from here? I thought I was going to be a university professor, and now I'm not. So I was like, okay, I've got to like make my way in the world. I've got to like get out there. And I thought, okay, well, what if I did like a blockchain media platform for Canada, for Canadians, right? Which was a dumb idea, obviously, because how one person could cover that this is ridiculous. It's a silly idea.
That's how it starts, though.
How it starts, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then very soon after that, so around that time, very soon after, and the NFT boom was happening, and I like talking to people, I like meeting people, and so I was spending a lot of time hanging out on Instagram, which is great for NFTs because it's image based, right? And so I just kind of ended up finding myself like reaching out to NFT artists, as a blockchain technology, for those that aren't, familiar with that, and saying, hey, why don't I write a story about you and your artwork, and get you some exposure.
Right.
And a lot of people were like, yeah, sure. So that's what I started doing. I just started like meeting people, getting into the Web3 community, and it was a lot of fun. It was, despite what was going on in the media, media narratives of like scams and rug pulls and all these things, there's really amazing people at Web3. And I'm so lucky that I got to meet all of these people. And then, of course, the NFT market crashed, right? And but I noticed that people that were working in like clothing and wearables, like there was this kind of like corner that wasn't getting quiet. And like people were still working and at the same time, a similar time, the metaverse was being kind of catching a little bit more of the mainstream attention. And I started thinking, I think there's something here. I think there's a growing field of interest. So let me go and just take a look over here. And at the same time, I had the idea of, okay, well, maybe I'll do a podcast. Like, I know it sounds like fun. I'm gonna try that out. And so I started doing stream of consciousness. The early podcasts are crap. They're just me like forcing myself to just like do it. Like, just do the thing and figure it all out later. And I would just get on and just like random stream of consciousness. So a little bit of backstory there. I'm trained also as a geographer, as a human geographer. So this sort of idea of space kind of caught my interest. So I just started thinking through topics of interest that I had come across as a human geographer, and thought about, what does virtual space mean for this? What does it look like? And
sorry, just for those that don't know, and since I don't know exactly, like a human geographer, is that kind of like going back to the like parking lots and like
it's
buses and everything, and like how people interact with the
world. Like
it's
you can think of it as like understanding human activity tied to a particular location.
Okay.
And so I started with that, and then I reached out to some of my NFT Web3 folks and said, you're doing this, this digital clothing thing. Like, why don't you come and talk on the show? And once I started interviewing people, I stopped doing stream of consciousness right away. It was just like, I'm just doing interviews now. And the idea for me, behind the show was a very, very broad interpretation of the metaverse. For me, I've approached it in the sense of whatever it is that, that digital layer that intersects with our lives. I'll talk about it, and I'll talk to people about it. And so as a result, the show is not always just, talking specifically about VR. I've had a lot of other people come and talk on other topics related to the metaverse, but it's largely sort of around, topics related to blockchain, related to VR. Now, I expect a lot more augmented reality to into the chat. And even some, I'm interested even like, as I was saying to you earlier about the talk I'm preparing for the business school on collecting data from augmented reality and fashion.
Right.
Like for me, like that's all part of it, right? Even the people that are not, even things that are not explicitly in the metaverse, there's tremendous technology that makes it possible. Yeah. And I'm interested in that as well, right? So that's basically what I think the show has kind of been about, and why it's not always just about like, a specific VR platform or application per se.
Right. Yeah. For sure. And to take a step back and on like the educational side, and what you're doing at St. Lawrence College, like what are some of the projects that you're working on making the metaverse and bringing into the world?
Yeah. So I'm new to the college. I just started in January, and so in the first term, I did some very light integration into the curriculum. One example would be creating. So I did a couple of things, but one of the things that I did is brought in virtual assets for our computer hardware class, so that students could enter into a world in spatial and see a CPU, a hard drive, a memory stick, a fan, a power supply unit, an actual computer case, and just give them the opportunity to interact with those digital assets. So that's something that I did in that first semester. And then now what I'm really working on, honestly, is introducing faculty to the space, putting the headsets on them and getting them to think through, exactly what you're doing, which is, how can we integrate this into curriculum? So you've got a bunch of amazing modules. I tried one of them this morning. The firefighting module is fantastic. Thank you. It's so wonderful.
It's all our incredible team.
I really enjoyed that. So, I think for me, the main thing that I'm trying to achieve is just to get those conversations going and get faculty exposure so they can think through how they can apply their domain knowledge to VR and AR in an education setting. And, as we talked about this morning, like, one of the biggest things is to get people away from the idea of, VR as a virtual classroom with desks and chairs and somewhere to put the slides, to get really into that, get them thinking about that immersive and experiential piece. And so, the work that you've done is fantastic. I haven't created anything like that, for sure.
Well, I guess with that, like, why do you think that's so important, and why are you pushing educators at St. Lawrence? You're talking to so many people and educators across other universities and colleges on making the metaverse. Like, is it just because you're so enthralled with virtual reality? Is it because there's maybe being declines in enrollment? Obviously a big discussion. Like, what is the drive for you?
I think for me, it's a new space, and that makes it exciting as heck. Right? Like, it's novel, but it's also powerful. And so I'm a bit of an evangelist in that respect. Like, I'm sure maybe there's some people like, oh gosh, Michael, he's going to talk about VR again. Listen,
I'm sure they think the same thing. So.
I literally, I'm walking around the college with my MetaQuest 3 headset in a box since I got it, just to get people to see it and say, like, the technology's here, and try to get people to try it. And it's actually interesting that, like, there's a lot of people that aren't interested and not excited. I gave a lecture to a guest lecture at a business class this week, and it was very interesting. I said, how many people here are using this technology? Or I have the MetaQuest 3 here. It's here. How many of you would like to try it out? Not a single hand.
Really?
No interest, but in my computing classes, there's lots of interest.
Right.
They're
Why do you
coming
think
right
that
up
is?
to me. I guess it must be opportunities for exposure, Now that being said, I'm also working with computer programming course students this semester. So that there's probably, I'm going to say that actually that those are the students that are really excited by the tech, because they're already creating assets for VR and AR.
Makes sense. Yeah.
And so I was a bit surprised, actually. It was kind of like, hey, look at this, and then like not a lot of interest. And so, that's okay, because it means that there's an opportunity there for me to be the person that says like, no, you really got to try this.
Yes.
Yeah.
And obviously that's kind of talking about students, and maybe they're just like, I'm here for class, man. I don't want to go into a headset and look goofy in front of my classmates.
Yeah.
But then you're also talking about like professors, and not to bash any other professors, but like, what do you think is the reason that some professors might not be interested? Is just like they have their course material set up and they're good to go?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that for sure. I think, people that are set in their ways, it doesn't matter what it is. Like, I think that's a generalization about people that are late in career, for sure. I think really, I mean, part of it just is not having the experience. And we were talking about this earlier about how, like, you can watch a YouTube of VR, AR module experience, and it just doesn't do it. Like, it's not it. You've got to put the headset on. And so when I do that with other faculty, they're just blown away. They're just like, this is amazing. This is incredible. But the for me, and we talked about this earlier, and you probably, as because of how much work you've done in the space and how many modules you've created and different domains that you're in, you can probably see that, there are a lot of obstacles for faculty. They might very well say, this is fantastic and awesome, and I could see how this could be really useful, but they don't have the skill or the time to generate or create that stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And like we were talking about, it's really that next tool that hopefully will come in the next couple of years. That is the PowerPoint of VR, where you can create it. And you were mentioning like Sketchfab and those asset libraries are starting to build towards that.
Yeah. So I think, like, I'm not necessarily, I don't see myself per se as the developer or the engineer in this. I see myself more as, like I said, the evangelist, more like, getting people to see the potential. And I don't see myself as going out and then teaching faculty. Like, I'm not like, hey, you should build this. Right. I'm like, you should know this is a thing that exists, and look for those libraries, those assets, and be aware of where they are so that you can access them. And so I guess in that respect, I maybe I'm a kind of a bridge between the two.
I relate with that a lot, because obviously I'm traveling around in the US and just showing it off. And like, it's 2016, started a VR company, and it was just because I tried on VR for the first time. I was like, other people have to see this. And it started spreading the word. So
so I'm definitely not like you in that respect. Like 2016, no, I was not in the VR space at all.
We're still so early though right now in 2023. So
yeah, I think so. And I think that the business students not putting up their hands is evidence of that. Because I don't know about you, but like, it's like, if you don't put up your hand, what you're telling me is you haven't tried it yet. Because once you have, you cannot not put up your hand. Like, once you try it out, unless you're one of the people that doesn't feel well, that I understand, right? Yes. But like, we had John in the room today, right? Yes. So it was me and you and Corey who's building these things, and John, who's faculty as well, but he's not in the space, right? We put him in the headset, and it's just like blown away, right? Like, wow, what is this?
Yes.
You know, and you know, I think that magic, maybe that's what I'm here for, is that magic and spreading that magic around.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I guess talking about magic and John's experience there, and you mentioned the MetaQuest 3, and so we played around with it a bunch, playing some multiplayer games and mixed reality. What do you think that is bringing to education, or just the evolution of VR, MR, XR in general? To quickly go on a little bit of a tangent, I was in Carleton University yesterday and giving some demos, and I was there with a professor who I've known for 7+ years, because he used to be at Brock University, and him trying it on, he was so blown away and saw that magic, and he's been in VR for 7+ years, and he was just saying it's the first time since the original Oculus that he's put on a headset, and he's like, okay, this is the next rung on the ladder. So yeah, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. You know, I've been saying for a little bit now that AR is the tipping point for adoption, for big adoption,
right?
You know, and it has to do with that. And maybe it's because of the fact that you can see the regular world around you. It just, I don't know. I think it just makes it even more accessible for people. And it's interesting to have the college-university divide too, because, you know, I'm coming from the university system myself, and I'm new in the college system. I think the college system is ripe for AV and VR because we are more hands-on, more practical, more experiential, as opposed to the university system, which, you know, to make broad generalizations here, at least, you know, as a sociologist or human geographer, like, you know, lectures, right? But that being said, you know, there's no reason why that education can't also be enriched by this, you know, and you know, it's that experiential piece, and we got pretty geeked out earlier, you know, in the lab today, just sort of, you know, talking about how that's going to continue to expand and become more developed. You know, why can't we also have that for the university students as well? You know, it's one thing to read history, it's another thing to experience it in some way.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious, and we haven't talked about this yet. I saw that you had the Ray-Ban glasses.
I do. I ordered them. They're coming.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts there of that compared to the MetaQuest 3?
Yeah, so it's interesting because Nreal also just dropped their new they're coming in November, right?
Too,
so yeah, so that's actually like AR, right? As opposed to the Meta Air, or sorry, the Meta AI, which doesn't have the IR function, but it does. So it's a little bit different. But what it does, I think, is help think through that interactivity with the world around us, because you know, AR is no AI, right? And so, you know, I think that what the Meta AI is going to do is move us in that direction of you know, getting data from the world around us. That it's not just that the direction we're moving in is not just about overlaying a digital layer over the physical realm. It's also about us having even more inputs from the physical world through the digital layer. And so one example, for example, I would give is like, you know, and I found this by accident. I don't know if you know this, but I was looking through my photos the other day, and on my iPhone. And what do you got? Do you have iPhone?
Google.
You have Google. Okay.
Yeah.
So I was looking through my photos, and iPhone has a little icon at the bottom of the photo gallery that you can tap, and it'll tell you things like where the picture was taken, what zoom you used, and there's all this data, that metadata that goes with the photo, right? It'll tell you like, oh, this is Jackson in the picture, and do you want to see more pictures of Jackson? And I was just skimming through, and this is so cool. Like, there's so many things happening in the space that, this Professor Ethan from Wharton posted the other day. He's like, I am a full-time AI researcher with a team of researchers, and I can't keep up. Like, this is what I do for a living, and I can't keep up. So that helped me feel a little bit better.
Helped me feel better too.
Yeah, right. So, so I saw that there was like a shape of an animal icon on the photo. As I was streaming through photos, I was like, whoa, what's that? So I went back and I touched it, and what happened is it said, this is a picture of a golden retriever. Would you like more details about this?
No way.
Yeah. So it scanned my image of my dog, identified it as a golden retriever, and then offered me to have information about that thing. Right. And so what I'm interested to see the development of from that perspective is, having eyewear that is feeding me inputs by recognizing what's happening in the environment. And those inputs don't have to be visual per se. I think that's an interesting thing, right? Is like, it could be audible. Right. So Meta could talk to me and say, well, that is, that is a picture of this, that, you think about like, even like taking a tour, being a tourist, like, what is that statue? And tell me about the statue, and getting like a speech in your ear about that statue, right? As opposed to looking it up through a phone.
Right. Or you can look at the new ChatGPT demos that are coming out where, I don't know if you saw the one where they were working on a bike. And
Yes.
You scan it in a photo and it walks you through. But if you just had your glasses on, it's like, okay, yep, that's the part. You're touching the right part. Yeah. Take that off. Oh, that's the right Allen key, and walks you through those steps and talks you through, just like your dad standing over you helping you out. Kind of thing. This is something I'm really excited about.
It's YouTube 100x, right? So like, how many YouTube videos have you watched to learn how to do stuff, right?
Yes.
We're about to get this like radical bump, know, and it's amazing for me how often I think about The Matrix, which is kind of cliche, right? But then at the same time, like, those moments in the movie of like, I need to fly a helicopter, and like, obviously it's not the same, but also at the same time, like, that's a thing we're moving towards, this idea where like, I'm just here and I need to learn something for this specific moment. We can do it with Google at the moment. It's just getting more media rich, media intensive, more tailored, more specific. And I guess, this is interesting as I'm talking out loud, education is the thing that I use to change my life and my future. That's a big part of my story and also it's a lot about self-learning, and now all of these incredible tools are being put out into the world that everyone has access to. And there's something about that for me. There's something about that democratization of access to information and being able to learn. I think that's really significant.
It's huge. And it's written on the side of our bus. Like our vision at XpertVR is to build a collaborative future where education is accessible, engaging, and impactful for all. And it's exactly that. And thinking off the top of my head as well, like I always reference the PwC study about VR versus traditional classrooms. And it's 4 times faster to learn. You're 4 times more focused, 275% more confident coming out, etc. And it makes me think like that 4 times faster to learn, that's just VR. But then you add on the AI side of things where there's a companion. And
So that's something that I because I know you as the VR guy, right? And we were talking with Corey earlier about his thing that he did for the medical simulation lab, and introducing ChatGPT into the room and being able to then the augmented reality avatar then you can talk to and engage with. So that, that, man, there's so much happening. Like I can barely keep up with the ideas, but what are you seeing around? Are you attentive to AI and how it's going to change XpertVR, for example?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's on that front end, and like we've been working with Georgian College for about a year now, developing and training in AI with ChatGPT for those soft skills training, mostly around like policing right now, like how do you interview victims as well as perpetrators and etc. But then on the back end as well, like our developers now can feed in some of their code, and it's like this is newer VR code that not a lot of people know about, and you feed it into ChatGPT or into the GitHub AI. I can't remember what it's called. It's a Copilot or something like that. But you feed it in, and the AI is able to be like, yeah, this is where the bug is, and this is why it's happening. Here's a suggestion, and it.
Okay.
From what I've been told, like I'm not a programmer, but from what I've been told, it doesn't like solve the issue, but it when you hit a roadblock, it gets you over that roadblock, so you can keep going.
Yeah. And then what about the change in what you produce, like ultimately? Like so today, for example, like you going through the fire, I don't know what it's called, search and rescue, right? So there wasn't an AI. I wasn't interacting with AI in that.
So your partner is technically AI, but like I said, he's not the sharpest tool in the toolkit. So he kind of just follows you around, and but he is technically a very basic AI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like for me, like, so my, my vision then is like that a mentor or coach, for example, could be in the room, in the VR space, for example.
Yeah.
And could be coaching me, could be talking to me. I could be talking or interacting with them. Is that something that you see in the future?
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I haven't thought about it too much, but you didn't get to see it, but I was explaining how you get a debrief after you go through search.
Yes.
Transcript and everything. Yeah. But it's just an email, and it has a bunch of text that you can read through, and you sit down with your professor, hopefully your trainer, and they'll go over it. But I can see how with an AI, it gets all that data, and then you step down, like you step out of the virtual search and rescue room into another virtual room, and there's your avatar, like let's say Fire Chief Michael that's sitting there across from you, and Fire Chief Michael is going to then go through that debrief with you.
I'm curious to see how that unfolds. I know that Corey was mentioning like that the pause, the delay is a little bit like a bit of a thing to confront in terms of that back and forth. I think less so, because like, you just accept it, right? Like, okay, so that, the coach is there's a half-second delay, and you just kind of like work it into your experience. Yeah. But the opportunity to have that kind of one-to-one, I think is a game changer.
It's huge. Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about what I see as, education finally moving out of the industrial era model.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, we've been in those desks and PowerPoints for so many years, and I guess going back to the kind of briefly talked about mixed reality with the Quest 3. I'm curious though, like, where are your thoughts there of like virtual reality and where that's applicable versus mixed reality and where that's applicable?
Interesting. Well, I think that, I'm thinking that in the long run, we can make an assumption that AR will continue to be integrated into daily life. So for me, AR will be your phone. Right. It's going to be there all day, every day.
Yeah.
And so one thought that comes to mind then is getting ready for that world, is starting to get training in an AR, in an augmented world that includes augmented reality, that mixed reality piece. And so that's something that comes to mind firstly. I think that also that there is a benefit to that richness and that fidelity that we have from real world physical environments.
Yes.
I think that there's something to that. And so that could be something like, you can go into maybe a workshop, a real workshop, but get trained using an augmented reality piece of equipment,
Right.
for example. And I think also the benefit long term is I feel like there will be I feel like the number of hours or the duration of time that people can tolerate VR will be less than AR.
For sure.
I have a sense there.
I think right now, like, we kind of recommend to a lot of people that 15 to 20 minute mark. Sometimes if they're going in for the first time, less, or maybe we want to give them a demo, so maybe more, but like in that range versus, like you're saying, you could have a pair of glasses on that's you're always on phone that you're able to connect with. So definitely a lot longer being in there.
Yeah, and then also I think there's probably something to be said for real world people interaction as well,
Yes.
right? So it's interesting that, like, so yes, we were talking about, well, imagine we could make the avatar AI powered, right? Or they could be, I guess you could have other people in the room in another headset appear as digital avatars. But maybe there's something to be said also for just letting there be physical humans in the space too. And mixed reality supports that. Right. So, and maybe that's an interim step. I don't know. As the technology unfolds, maybe, we're not able to get that high fidelity virtual reality space going quite yet. So until we get there, we'll do mixed reality, and I can have an actual live human in the space.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting thoughts. Yeah.
I don't know how far off, what Lex and Zuck pulled off in their podcast. I don't know how far off that is from like a big rollout.
Right. Yeah. It seems like on one hand it's far off because you need to go get all those scans. But then I remember I was talking with somebody on LinkedIn and I shared an article, I think from Upload VR, and there was some sort of prototype of how you could get those Kodak.
I've seen, yeah.
So it's like,
So you never know, like, is that really working, or like, are you just like publishing something to get like some attention quickly, right? I don't know. Yeah. So yeah.
And it sounds like, too, from what you're saying with the example of like the workshop, it's kind of like if you have the resources or the space, then maybe mixed reality is the solution, because you can go into that workshop and you can get the demo in augmented reality, but on the physical machine.
Yes. Yeah.
Or for search and rescue, if you have the building to go through, you can set up fires and victims and everything. But if you have a little classroom and you want to use that classroom for 50 different scenarios and things, then virtual reality.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And so, and I don't know that also that, like, I think that's a great response, because it's not an either or.
Right.
It's not that one is better. It's just which tool do you need for which scenario.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Love it. Let me look at my questions here. We talking about virtual reality, and if we have the space, one of the ideas we were chatting about was the VR gymnasium.
Yes.
Like that. So you had a lot of amazing ideas around it. Kind of explain the concept we were talking about and your ideas around it.
Yeah. Well, what you were talking about, and just put up your hand if I start to talk about things I'm not supposed to share.
I think it's all.
but you were talking about this emergency response sort of scenario thing where you have a command center, I think you were saying, like, so maybe we could have like let's say like a city block, right? And maybe there's an explosion.
Yes.
And now you've got fire and EMS and police and who knows who else on site, and some non-playable characters like journalists, even, like, and how so then we started thinking about how all of those players could be humans wearing headsets, right? And we could all be interacting in this kind of virtual space, let's say. And we were talking also about, this the movement issue, movement with joystick or movement with foot movement, right?
Yeah.
And then we were thinking through the idea that wouldn't it be cool if we had this, so we have this large space like a gymnasium, let's say, and we could put 25 people in the gymnasium, and they could be, and it's a holodeck, right? Like, so everyone is now in the city block, and they're all playing these different parts, these different roles. And then we started thinking, okay, if we could have like 6 people from Kingston, and then there are 6 people in London in a gymnasium that has the same dimensions, and we can anchor everything so that when I'm standing in the southwest corner of the space, everyone else that's beaming in sees me in the southwest corner of the space, right? So that sounded really cool.
Yeah. And I think Corey had an amazing idea too of like, how could we go even further than to maybe segment the gym a little bit, where we have an extra room that's the emerge room. So we have doctors in there.
Yeah.
So that the paramedics are out on the street.
Yeah.
And then they walk over to the ambulance, and there's an ambulance driving simulator.
Yes.
Maybe they jump into that. They have to drive it. And then when they get out the door, now they're at the hospital, and the doctors are there, and they're able to hand off.
Yeah.
And I think too, I didn't think of it until right now, but you brought up the journalists, I believe, and I think that's a really interesting idea too, because as I've been thinking about this idea over the past couple months and what we're trying to build toward in 5+ years probably until we'll get there, but always just thinking about paramedics, fire, police, but bringing in somebody like a journalist in there, it's like they can be there trying to ask questions as the emergency's going on, but then afterwards it's like that opportunity that, okay, one of the students has to pretend to be the police chief, and they have to talk to the journalists about what happened there and go through that scenario.
Yeah, and that scenario building, I think, is pretty fantastic. In the scenarios that I've done in real world, it's like, okay, me and like my partner who's playing the injured person, right? And then like there's no one else involved, and it's like, that's not life.
Yeah.
Right. So a lot of the training I did was at the Y, right? So I did an evacuation at the Y once, full scale evacuation, because of a nauseous substance in a stairwell. I was choking, I couldn't breathe, so we did a full evac. This was just after, I think, the London bombings. So everyone, which was just not too many years after 9/11.
Right.
So people were still on high alert. That is such a more complex scenario and involves so many more variables, and like staff. So I was the point at that time. I was acting manager at the time, so I was in charge, and like all of the staff running to me and saying, what do we do, and all the members, and it's just such a more complex situation than maybe just like a broken leg or something. And so the ability to simulate that would be quite fantastic. And it's hard, as we talked about. One of the things is always, it comes down to resources of time, resources of money. So if you think through a room the size of the gymnasium, for example, you could invoke all of these virtual avatars that could play a role in all of that.
Yeah. I think that was a part of our conversation too, and something that I've been thinking of is you have that large scale ability to have everybody come together, but then if you can build that modularly, then you can have one person at home with virtual avatars practicing one thing, and then you come together and you can practice once a year or whatever that time.
Yeah, and so that sort of co-location piece is interesting, right? It's fascinating.
Yes, very exciting.
Yeah.
I like to do this kind of rapid fire. Sometimes it turns into tangents.
Oh, I think I've seen you do this.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, man.
So basically, I just have like a bunch of words related to what we've been talking about, but also not, and just to kind of get a vibe of who you are and your thoughts. So I'll say a word or two, and then you respond with whatever comes to mind first.
All right.
First one, pop culture.
Pop culture.
Right turn, I know.
No, I don't know. What about pop culture? I don't think I know much about it. I think it's the default.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. Conference or conferences?
Love conferences. Great opportunity to connect with others, to network, to get exposed to other ideas, to see parts of the world that I haven't seen before. And happy to come to conferences anytime and every time. I think the sharing of the minds is important, and also the opportunity to socialize, particularly for academics who spend a lot of time alone.
Right. Yeah. You got your office on campus, and you're there for most of the time. Yeah. Don't know if you have an opinion on this one, because I know you're not technical like me, but Unity or Unreal, or any thoughts?
So I've used Unity a little bit, so I don't have much to say about Unreal, but I have some love for Unity, because as a non-technical person, I've been able to get some asset. I got an asset at a Ready Player Me.
Yep.
I got an asset from Sketchfab. I joined those assets in Blender and shipped them to Unity and got them up into Spatial.
Okay.
And so, yes, Unity's great.
Agreed. We use Unity at XpertVR, but I'm also a fan of Unreal and Epic and everything they're doing. But yeah, no, we're glad to hear that you're into Unity as well. Right at the start, we talked about NFTs.
Yeah.
Educational NFTs. Thoughts, anything that comes to
What's
mind?
an educational NFT?
So I like to think of it, that's, I guess, why I asked the question. I like to think of it as, number one, just your diploma as an NFT, so that it's something that is verified.
So credentials start on the blockchain.
Yeah. But I also look at it as, I could see a future where there's a virtual bookstore in the metaverse of your school, where you go in and there's an NFT of like a fire helmet, and you purchase that, and that gives you all the course material that you'll need for the fire program at that school. But then it's also something that now you can wear that in the metaverse, or you can use it for other things. So any thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's great. There was a report put out by eCampus Ontario recently, actually, about what they call digital badging.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't have to be on the blockchain.
Right.
It can be, though, and there's benefits to that. The non-fungibility, the security. So I think there's a benefit to it. It doesn't have to be done that way, though.
For sure.
In terms of using it to gain access to resources, that can work too. Yeah, absolutely. Doesn't have to be done that way. It can be done without the blockchain tech. So I don't know that I can pitch really hard to go that way per se. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. The metaverse.
Yeah. What about it?
What are your thoughts?
What are my thoughts?
When you hear the metaverse, like, I think a lot of people may have like a negative terminology or thoughts about it. Like, what do you think when you hear the metaverse? Spatial
computing, right?
Yeah.
Oh man, this is a great question, because I've been running the show for a couple of years now. Yeah. What is the metaverse?
Maybe that's a good place to start. How would you explain the metaverse? Like, how do you describe it in
one
sentence?
So, and it depends on the audience as well. And I also know that that is a thing. Like, let's define it. What is it? Actually, we had this question. I did a panel for DCN Global. They had a conference in Sydney, Australia, a couple of weeks ago. And it was interesting because I started by saying, well, I'm probably not going to be liked very much after I say this, but I interpret the metaverse extremely broadly, as I said at the beginning of our interview today. for me, I'm interested in all of the things that are digital that intersect with our lives, and the metaverse can include full virtual reality. It can. I know some people will argue that it has to be blockchain based. I think that the blessing and curse of the metaverse is that it is a very big term and is used very flexibly. I think the way that as I said at the start of the show, I'm fascinated by the digital layer of our lives, and it happens in I don't know how old you are, but I'm one of the remaining generations that got to live life pre-digital.
Yeah, I'm 27, so
so you're a kid.
I will say I didn't have TV growing up, so like I was outside a lot and got some of the best of both worlds. But yeah.
And so I've watched the spawning of the digital layer of life on planet Earth. To make whatever the metaverse might be, it's digital first and foremost. It's the digital realm. And as I say, like that can mean getting into a virtual reality headset and visiting a virtual world. But I like to see it more broadly, more openly, that we're all living in the metaverse, and that sometimes that means paying for things electronically. I had a really interesting experience the other day. I bought my Meta AI glasses. Yeah. And so I'm standing at the register, and I bought also a pair of Ray-Ban aviators. Okay. So I can be cool like Tom Cruise. My daughter's so wonderful. She's 10. She's like, "Daddy, you look like Tom Cruise." I was like, "I'll take these." Yes. And so I go up to the register and ready to pay, and I pull out my card, and I put my card in the thing because it's a large purchase at this point, and so I've got to put it in and pin it, and I press enter, and I had the strangest experience. I felt this like electricity like flow through my arm, through my body. Like I felt like energy was going somewhere through the payment mechanism. Right. So I just feel like we're entering into this very strange part of human civilization where the digital and the physical is getting tighter and tighter and tighter. So for me, the metaverse is all of it. It's all of it. How are we augmenting human life through the digital layer? Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Well, I love it. We'll continue. Feel free to hate in the comments if you want.
Try not to, though. No, Michael's amazing. So. Thanks. But to continue on, we got 4 more here. So education.
Changed my life, really. Like I have so much that I owe to the fact that there's this thing that I can do, that humans can do, called learning.
So what sets us apart?
Yeah. And so when you say education, I feel grateful for that fact, for the fact that there is learning and that there is teaching in the world, because I would not be living the life I am today not for that. It's one of the defining human experiences is the ability to learn and grow. And so education is a very big word for me. And I'm always trying to learn more, and I'm always supportive of people that want to learn more. You know, I tell people all the time, like, cut your Netflix time budget in half and learn something.
Right.
You know, not the quasi-informative mockumentary stuff that's there, politics aside, and the slants that maybe, you know, are presented in that way. But like, and I'm not saying like, I'm trying to be respectful, and, you know, but like, I feel like the more that I can make my daily life about learning, the more amazing and miraculous being alive becomes. And so this kind of thing right now, what we're doing, the fact that this is in my life, like, I'm incredibly grateful and I feel incredibly blessed.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Love it. And 3 more. We'll go rapid fire for these last 3. So, favorite book.
You get the wrong guy. Yeah, realize that. Right?
No, it's great. It's great. It's good.
My favorite book?
Well. Yeah,
7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Dr. Stephen Covey.
I've been meaning to reread that. Favorite movie? Talking about Netflix.
I can't. I'm not going to be able to pick. The first one that comes to mind often is The Matrix.
Okay. Yeah. Very applicable. Yeah. And then lastly, I guess this one might be a little.
I'm doing better. Rapid fire. See that?
Right. This week's top XR blockchain news that comes to mind.
Well, Quest 3 came out last week, but that's the first thing that I get to. I'm really interested in Meta AI chatbots.
Yeah.
Very interested in that.
Yes. Yeah. Can't wait to explore them as well.
Yeah.
All right.
Hopefully available in Canada sometime soon.
Yes. Hopefully. To end us off, just two last questions. Number 1, who should we have on the podcast next? Who else should be chatting?
Oh my gosh. Oh,
we've had so many amazing guests. Curious who, either from the guests or just colleagues that you know.
Oh, geez. It caught me off guard with that one. Rethink for a second. You done Victory XR?
No, but I've been chatting with a few people there. So yeah, bring Victory XR on.
Yeah, John King.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I'm connected with him on LinkedIn. So
yeah,
if not,
I can connect you.
Okay, amazing. Thank you. All right, John King. And then you're working on so many amazing projects, from on the blockchain to maybe the metaverse to what you're doing at school. What current projects would you like to shout out? Is there anything that, if somebody's watching, they might be able to help with? Anybody that you?
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. You know, what I'd really love to be able to do, and you described this that you did this with your team to make the police directing traffic thing. Yeah. You know, I would love. I'm working on getting some kind of special event, hackathon, something that would give the students a chance to build something in VR, XR, AR. So to make that happen, I need partners outside partners, sponsors would be great. So that's something that I could really benefit from some support on, or people that want to partner on and get involved with. So yeah.
Well, I can say first of all that I'm happy to partner and consult in any way we can. And
fantastic.
Like we did our own, and I know other schools that have done them. So
yeah.
I can connect you with people that have done
awesome.
them.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think lots of ideas around that. It's awesome.
Thank you.
Well, Michael, thank you for coming on.
My friend.
Enigma.
Oh, wow.
This
is
cool to
like
be in person.
such a wonderful day. Thank you.
No,
thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Awesome.